Hello guys, today we will learn about how to use the C# programming and how do we implement in the Visual Studio 2019. In the previous lesson we utilized the Visual Studio Code programming language because Visual Studio Code is an editor to simple basic addition of the code implementation. But now the C# programming is a object-oriented programming with the highest property of the Windows Form application, in which it's used for the simple user interface design. So we need to implement in the Visual Studio, and we need to use the form application study, and as a result we cannot use the Visual Studio Code editor. So you need to download or install these features, and we need to create a basic elements of Visual Studio Code in C# programming. And so in Visual Studio, in order to create a new project, we should select this button, and in the first place we should focus on the console application because it's a written language instead of the Windows Form application in C# programming. But in order to cover or to understand the underlying mechanism of the C# programming language, we should utilize the console application program. Okay, this is a basic black screen program, and we need to increase, or we need to cover the whole feature of the console application programming with the C# programming. Okay, we should select this form, and we should button of the next, and then we should create, or we should select the project name in this section. In our study, app 10 should be okay, and location of the program in the CPP lesson, app 10, and then place solution and project in the same directory should be selected, because the place solution and project can be split into the two parts, but we should take this notation. Okay, and then we can create the program in this notation. Then creating project is also in here. Then we will study the C# programming in the language observation. Okay, in the first place, Visual Studio give a simple syntax or the example program at this point, which we have the namespace, class, and main function, as well as in the C++ programming. Okay, it's the same structure, but with a small difference. Okay, and we need to delete all the things in order to tell us how to use this programming language. Okay, in the first place, there are three sections at this point. It's the output section at the bottom of the screen. The output shows us the program's output. Okay, as well as the terminal programming. And program CS is a default program. In here we can write the code, the whole code related to the C# programming language. Okay, and then we have the Solution Explorer project. In the Solution Explorer we have the main body of the program. Okay, the solution app 10 is here, and then we can create, or we can add the specific projects into this one. Okay, in our study we have the project app 10 in here. Okay, this is a project file, but solution may have the many projects file. Okay, so we have the C# project file in here, and then the dependencies as well as in here, because the whole the library, including the library, are contained in this function block. Okay, in C++ programming, the compiler has this type of library, but we should add with the usage of the include keyword. Okay, but in Visual Studio as well as the C# programming language, the dependencies is initialized by the compiler or the programmer. Okay, and so in order to write a code, we have the program.cs text file. Okay, if we write a CS C# addition, then the program is interpreted by the compiler as a C# programming. Okay, if I change the notation of these things, and then it must be a C++ programming. Okay, but we cannot use in this project a session. Okay, but it's interpreted the C++ code. Okay, but in our application we must focus on the CS file notation in here, and then we need to create or the write the whole the program into the program CS. Okay, and now we will talking about the how we use the C# programming in here. Before we study basic building blocks of C# programming language, we need to look at a bare minimum C# programming structure, in which in the C++ programming we focused on the hello world program, and the same syntax or the same structure should be done in here. Okay, so in C# programming we have a command line like the C++ programming, and then a C# program consists of some basic structure. Okay, in which we have the namespace declaration mode in here, because the namespace is included as well as the C++ programming, but in C# programming it must be mandatory, or it must be included in the main body program, because the C# is a object-oriented programming or the class-based programming, and then the whole the main function or the start execution function is included by the namespace and class structure. Okay, and so we need a class structure in here, and then the class methods is also be used at this point. Class attributes and main function method should be included at this point. The main function method is required for the execution point. For execution point to program starts with that function, but the main function block should be covered by class notation, and this covered by the namespace. Okay, which means that we must implement the main function block, and main function is included in the class structure, and the class must be in the namespace block. Okay, so we can use some basic program, or we can write this program right now. Okay, firstly we need to include the namespace with the specific name. In this lesson, app 10 can be named by us, and so this namespace includes at least one basic class structure. For example, class hello mkt should be added in here. So in order to run this program, or in order to debug, or in order to compile this program, we must write a main function block, okay, in here. But this main function is a special function in C# programming, okay. String arguments must be included at this point. So this main function written in the form of the static. Why? Because in C++ programming, class has a body, has a function of the some specific points, which means that if we write in C++, for example, class A, and then in C++ programming static num obtain counts function can be written, and then the class A or the num obtain counts can be called by this notation, okay. So this function can be called from the class notation, okay. This function cannot be called by the object or the derived possess functions, okay. Num obtain counts cannot be called in C++ programming. So this tells us that the whole function in class property must be a static function, because class can run at this function in the real time, okay. If we delete these things, and then this function cannot be called by the programmer, like this one. In order to include some libraries in here, we can use the using keyword, okay. Using keyword add specific library. At this point, system namespace is a library is declared in the dependency section in here, and then we can use system function as an input or output function block, like this one. Console is a class of something, and then console is a system console is a class, and it has many static functions because the console is a class, and then we can use the specific function of the console if it is static, okay. The write line is a specific function in here, and then we can add the string character at this point, and then we can use these words in here. So void console write line is a string value, and with 18 overloads in here, so we can write the integer value, float value, or the string character at this point, okay. In order to run this program, we can use the Control F5 button in here, but we have an error. So the error is the program does not contain a static main method suitable for an entry point. What does it tell us? The error sourced from the main function, because in the class notation we should write whole the function as a static, and then this function is possessed only by the class notation. Then we can call in the runtime notation, okay, and then we can rerun this program, and then we have the hello world notation, okay. So properties and colors should be this one as a white, and string text this one, okay. Now we have the hello world notation in here. and then this is the first of the C# programming. Okay, so in summary, the first line of the system function is the using system. The using keyword is used to include the system namespace in the program, and a program has multiple using as well as the include value of that system. For example, component model can be added to this notation. Okay, so this is a include keyword like in C++ programming. Okay, a namespace is a collection of class, and it must be have the at least one class notation in here. So the hello mkt namespace contains the class of the hello mkt, in which this class is included from the namespace app10. Okay, so this is a class, which means that the main method can be updated in here, or it must be written at that code, and so the main function should be included in the class method. Okay, so in the first example we can say about that. Okay, and now we should define a new class A at this point, and then we can run this program. Okay, there is no syntax error in here, but the class A also is defined at this point. But if we put the main function into the A class and then we can run this program, then there is no error. And so if we are creating a class definition at this point, and then we can implement this function, we can use this notation. But at this point we can transfer the main function block in here, and then this function can be called by here, because the program CS has a specific namespace. So the program includes the class hello mkt, and then the namespace app10 can be called in here. Okay, so in the second place, the static void main function can be called in here, and then we can run this program. Then we have an error. This error feature top level statements is not available in C#. Okay, which means that this main function should be included in any class. Okay, and then static void main cannot be also run in this program. Okay, and so we can implement the whole function blocks in here with the main notation. And now this is a first example session x1 in here, and so in the next example we can utilize the C# programming language with the same structure. And so in the second example we create a rectangle class. So we need to use the using keyword in order to add the system library in here, and we need to create a namespace at this point. Rectangle rectangle name can be written in here, and then we have the class execution can be called at this point, and then we must write the main function block in here. String arguments related to the program output, but we don't care how it's work at this point. But if you need to understand this argument structure, you need to look at the internet or some specific C# programming. Okay, this not related in here. Okay, and so we need some specific rectangle class in here, and then we can write a program this point. Okay, the class rectangle can be seen by the execution program because the namespace is common at this point. But if we have this notation, and then rectangle cannot be used at this point. Okay, and so in the next example we clearly understand these things, but in the first example this can be used. Okay, so in order to create a rectangle, we need to give a name rectangle R at this point, and then we can run this program. Then we have this syntax. In C++ programming, whole class has the constructor and destructive object. But what happens if we use the C# programming? Rectangle constructor can be written as the console write line application, in which the rectangle constructor can be added in here, and then rectangle destructor can be called at this point. And so rectangle destructor in here. Okay, and so if we rerun this program, then we don't have any output point, but there is no syntax error in here. So in the class notation, it's a basic difference from the C++ programming. We need to create a dynamic rectangle at this point. Okay, and so if we create a new program, then rectangle is inaccessible due to its protection level. It's a error. So what happened in here? In the class rectangle section, we cannot use the hold function in here, which means that in order to use the main function block at this point, the rectangle R cannot be defined at the previous example like this one, because the rectangle R cannot be called at this point, but the variable is okay. But in order to create a rectangle object in here, then we have an error. Rectangle is inaccessible due to its protection level. So in order to public to this rectangle class in here, then we should add the public keyword at this point, and as well as this one. Okay, and so in order to write this program, the modifier public is not valid for this item at this point. Okay, and so if we construct this object, and rectangle constructor can be called by now. Okay, and so as the basic difference with the C++ programming, the rectangle destructor cannot be called at this point, but our function cannot be declared with the destructor of public. Okay, we cannot use the public notation at this point, but the destructor can be called in here. Okay, so we should clean solution and then if we rerun this program, then rectangle constructor can be called at this point. Okay, so this program is okay with us, but the rectangle destructor cannot be seen at this point, but the program and definitely call these function blocks at this point. Okay, and so we can write a specific number of characters at this point. The double length can be defined in here, double width can be defined in here, and then we can initialize both two these things. Double L and double W can be called at this point, but the length cannot be initialized at this idiom. Okay, and the width and W can be called is in here. In C++ programming we can use this idiom, but we cannot use the member initialization programming. Okay, and so the length can be equal to these things and width equal to the V at this point, and then we can create the public void display function at this point, and so console write line can be called by these things, length, and we can parameterize this thing like the length function at this point, which is the similar to printf %d new line can be called by E. This is the same syntax at this point. Okay, and so console write line can be called by the white value at this point, and so 4455 and R display can be called at this point. Okay, the rectangle constructor have been called by the program, and length 4.4, width 5.5 can be given at this point. Okay, and so we can use this variable in the other class. We don't have any class notation, but we can add the public keywords at this point, public keywords at this point, then R can be called by the length and width value. Okay, we can assign a new variable at this point. Okay, so we can rerun this program, then we don't have any error at this point, and so we can create some specific function in here, public double get area function at this point, and so we can return the length times width function in here, and then this can be written at that form, console write line function at this point, and then the area of the rectangle point. Then we can use this idiom at this point with the parameter of R get area function in here. Okay, this is the public double get area, and then we can call this function at this point. And so we can run this program, then 5 times 10 equal to the 50, and then the area of rectangle is called by the 50 points. Okay, we can add some specific function blocks in here in order to construct the overloading mechanism. We can write these function blocks in here, console.writeLine. It's a rectangle default constructor can be defined at this point, and then if we rerun this program, then we don't have any error at this point, because the rectangle can be created by the constructor overloaded things, and rectangle R1 is equal to the new rectangle default constructor can be used as well as in this program. Okay, and so there is another important property in C# programming. The whole variable should be defined in the dynamic range or the dynamic system. This the new keyword gives us to specific memory allocation in runtime programming. Okay, so in C# programming, everything is related to the runtime operation. It's also important to know that the compiler compiles the whole program, and the runtime operation can be achieved by these things. But in order to create or in order to define a variable or the class structure at this point, we need to use the whole things with the parameter of the new keyword. Okay, and so in order to create some variable assignments, double A is equal to 1, double B is equal to 2, and console write line can be obtained by the A times B is equal to plus A times B can be called at this point. Okay, A times B is equal to 2, or we can call it 5, and then A times B 5. This is an operator overloading notation at this point, but we can create a compiler static memory allocation at this point. But if we use the rectangle new operation at this form, we have the dynamic memory range should be included in here. Dynamic memory can be allocated from the C# programming. Okay, this is the second example in here, and we can pass or we can move to the example 3. Okay, and now we should implement the complex class in here, and firstly we should add the using system library in order to use the console class. In here, namespace math classes can be defined at this point, and so we can define some specific class like the complex class can be called in here, or class something like that. Basic arithmetic operators can be defined at this point. Okay, and then we can write some execution class which includes the main function block in here, static void main function at this point, and console.writeLine. This is main function blocks. Okay, and so if you rewrite if we rerun this program, then this is the main function block at this point. Okay, and so we can use or implement these two classes in the namespace math class. But if this class is defined in here, then we can define the variable or the objects in terms of this class notation. Okay, and so the complex class and with the name of the A should be called by the complex class at this point. But if we run this program, then we have that the type or namespace name complex couldn't be found at this point. And so the compiler cannot find the complex class, but the complex class is here, okay? And now we should notice that the namespace math class has the complex and basic arithmetic operators. So we need to use this namespace with the keyword of the using math classes keyword, okay? And then this file scope, except from the namespace, then reach the whole function of the math classes, okay? And so if we rerun this program, then we don't have any error at this point, okay? Because the complex A is include the math classes, and then if we use the using keyword in order to reach the whole function or the whole class notation in the math class, and then we can use in the main function block two complex and basic arithmetics operators. And so we can implement the whole feature of the complex class at this point. Okay, Ammar is here and I'm perfect. And so we can write all the codes in which we can use the complex and basic arithmetic operators in C# programming. And so in class complex we have two specific variables, and with the type of double, real and imag, which means that imaginary. And so we have specific constructor object definition in here with the code of real 0 and imag is 0, okay? And so we can also set some specific function in the name of set value with the parameter of int r or double r and double e, and the implementation code includes the real equals to r, imag equal to I, okay? And so in order to display all the results, we need to add the public void display value in here. And so console write line function can be added at this point, real equal to real, and console write line function imaginary part is equal to the imag, okay? And so his phone is calling and I hate it, and Ammar is going now. And so we have the specific destructor at this point, console write line, the destructor was called, okay? And so this is the complete complex constructor, and then we can create a specific complex object at this point. Complex C can be added to the program block, and so we have the C set value function in here, which means that the set value 2, 3 can be given at this point, and C display value can be called at this point. Real 2 and imaginary is 3. And so we can also write a specific program or the specific function blocks in here, which means that we can add the absolute function blocks in here. So void it's not a void, public double abc function at this point. And so we can use, or we can create the absolute form of function by using the notation of the real and imag values at this point. So double result can be initialized by the real times real plus imag times imag in here, and then sqrt function is not included at this point. Also using math class in here, and so the math class is included in the system library at this point, and so result can be updated by the math class abstract function in here. Result can be added at this point, and we should return the result value in here. Okay, and so C ABC function can be called or add at this point, and console write line function, and with the parameter of the these things, absolute value of this complex variable must be equal to this function block. Okay, and so absolute value of complex variable is 30, but in the trigonometric notation we should utilize the sqrt function block at this point. Okay, and so math.sqrt, and so this must be upper S character, and so we can rerun this program. Then we have this value 3.60. okay, and this is the basic class of the complex. Okay, and the basic arithmetic operators includes the addition, multiplication, or the division operator related to the C# programming. Okay, but firstly we must notice that this set value or display value or abstract function is not defined by the static keyword. So this function can only be called by the variable, like in C++ programming. So console write line function must be a static definition, which means that if we go to the definition of this system namespace, the public static class console has the static functions blocks at this point, which means that these functions only can only be called by the class itself. Okay, and so if we use this notation, public void display value or the void set value without a static definition, then we should create at least one variable or object at this point. Okay, and so basic arithmetic operators can be defined by the public basic arithmetic operator constructor block at this point, and so we have the two variables double num1 double num2 can be added at this point, and so we need to add the double 1 double num2 should be defined at this point, and so n1 and m2 is updated to num1 and num2. Okay, so in order to add our other operation creation, we need to implement the void add function blocks at this point, which means that the addition of these two things must be given at this point. Double result is equal to the num1 plus num2, and then console write line can be called by the addition of num1 plus num2 is equal to what? Result. Okay, and so if we create a basic arithmetic operators at this point, and then console write line can be called 3 times at this point in order to give a empty space in this notation, and then basic arithmetic operators can be defined by B, and new basic arithmetic operators constructor can be called by 4.3 and 5.6 at this point, and then B add function can be called at this point, and then if we rerun this program, then we have syntax error at this point, and so okay, you need to add this point. Okay, and then if we rewritten this program, then we have addition of 4.3 and 5.6 is equal to the 9.9 at this point. Okay, and so we can use this function block with the subtract function at this point, and so we can add subtract of num1 and num2 is equal to these results. Okay, and so multiplication of this class multiply function at this point, and so this is the num1 times num2 is equal to the result. This is a multiplication operation. Okay, and so B multiply function can be called, and B subtract function can be called at this point. Okay, and so multiplication subtract is here, multiplication can be added at this point. Okay, multiply is equal to the 24 and subtract is equal to the negative 1.2 at this point. Okay, and so we can create a static function block in here, public void static function block in here, do all things at this point, and so we can run the add function or we can run these things notation, and we can run these things, and we can run these things. Okay, so it's a subtract of the other is multiply of these things. Okay, and now we can call the basic operator this function do all things, because this function includes the do all things class at this point. Okay, so if we rewrite this program, a member modifier static must precede the member type and name should be included in here. So in order to create a variable at this point in the static class notation, then we need to, or we don't need to, create any member. So static function can only be used by the reading only operation, okay, or the sum unchangeable operation, okay. So if we do this notation like this one, num1 plus num2 at this point, then maybe we can call this function block, okay. And so we don't have the any operation. Do all things cannot be called by these two things, okay. So in the next lesson we will discuss about this feature, and we will learn about how to use in the form application blocks accession, okay. Have a nice day and be with Ammar.